Greetings. This Herbal Pleasure Potions session is about Shiso, the Japanese plant that is used to color pickled ginger, used to color ume plum. It's a really amazing herb that I like to use for digestional support, including for bloating in the intestinal tract, as well as bloating in the reproductive tract of somebody with a uterus. I use it when I'm just feeling really full in my belly. I use it to support my kids with their digestive distress. So the plant, the part that I use from the plant are the leaves, and this is a green shiso. There is also a red shiso, which has leaves more like this. They are similar to the basil plant. They used to be in the same genus, the Ocimum genus. Now their genus, they've been reclassified as Parua. But just kind of structurally, the way that they grow, the way that the stem and leaves and flowers are structured, they're very similar to basil. And for that reason, I kind of use them similar to how I use basil. I like to use them in tea blends. I like to eat them raw. I like to pack them in honey. And I'm also going to demo today making pickled ginger with shiso. So right now I have, this is the dried shiso that I have. The way that I dry it is I will lay out the leaves on a screen, something flat. I have hung the whole, I've just cut the whole plant and hung that up to dry, and that seemed to work pretty well. They dried better laid out flat, so that's what I'm kind of mostly doing right now, but I do have limited space for drying things on flat surfaces, so drying things hanging has been really useful. Just like a basil, if it's packed too thick when it's drying, it's going to ferment and rot. So I like to try to just have a single layer of shiso leaves laid flat so that there's a lot of air circulation. Just like a basil, it takes a long time for them to dry. And they tend toward browning if it takes too long to dry. So the dried shiso, I've really been enjoying putting in tea blends. It's just got this really amazing little, like, you know, vaguely anisey, little bit minty flavor. I think that, you know, a lot of people like that I hear don't like the flavor of anise, but I encourage people to try different plants that have the flavor of anise because, you know, a lot of folks who don't like anise, I've said, hey, try this anise hyssop, and they just love it. Anise hyssop is a native North American prairie plant that's anise flavored, has some of these similar anise qualities supporting the digestive tract. So I think that people who don't like the flavor of anise might enjoy the flavor of shiso. The first time that I had shiso, I was helping a friend in her garden, and she had just like had all of these shiso that had reseeded themselves prolifically, and I just started like eating them, and I just ate them, and it was at a time when I had kind of some bloating in my abdomen. I think it was premenstrual, and I was amazed at how much better I felt when I was eating the shiso. And then when I went into my friend's house, she made a tea, and this is a woman who is Japanese, So I am not fully fluent in how this herb is used traditionally in Japan. What I've seen is how my friend used it and how my body has been called to interact with it. My friend uses it in a lot of the cooking that she does, just as like a spice flavoring that she adds to so many things. And so that's kind of why I started adding it to my tea blends, because I drink tea every day, and this feels like an herb that really could be supporting a body on a regular basis and not just used as a medicine, but used as a food medicine. So I'm starting to put it in more and more tea blends, and it's just a really nice flavoring, a really nice addition. I can put in larger quantities so that the flavor pops, or smaller quantities so that it's a background flavor. And this is what I've been giving to my kids when they have a sore belly. I'll just give them a piece of the dried leaf and they'll chew on it. I haven't even gotten around to making tea for them out of it yet. So that's the dried perla. The fresh perla also can just be munched on, tasted, whatever. Another preparation that I did is that I've been packing ginger with the shiso in it. So at the very top is shiso, and down here is ginger, and it's in raw honey. And so you can see that it's like it's liquidy, and that's because the liquid from the ginger and the shiso has come out and has mingled with the honey to create more of a syrup. So I can use this honey as a syrup. I could use this to give to my kids when they're having digestive distress. I could use this in flavoring foods. I could use this for myself. I could use this when I make elderberry syrup. So the way that I did that is I just would take whole leaves. I don't even need to chop them up, but like, of course, if you chop them up or rip them up, you're going to be breaking open more of the cell walls. But this is fermenting because there's water and honey here. It's going to be fermenting. So fermentation breaks up all of those cell walls over time as well. So I'm ripping it up. And just packing it in the jar. And then I'm just gonna submerge it, make sure that that there's honey touching all of it. And I'm gonna put it back on my shelf and let it soak and ferment. Yum! So that's shiso with honey. I'll be right back. Pickled ginger with shiso. The traditional pickled ginger is made with the red shiso. This one I made with the green shiso, so it doesn't have as much of that pink coloring. There's 2 jars that I made, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the 2 ways that I make this preparation. This one is raw ginger that's packed in a brine syrup. This one is cooked ginger that's packed in a brine syrup. The brine syrup is the same for both of them. It's just that in one of them, the ginger was never cooked. In the other, the ginger was cooked. So the traditional way to make the pickled ginger is to use young ginger. That's because the young ginger is kind of more tender, and the young ginger is going to be ginger that's still growing. So as you can see, this ginger has been sprouting for a while. It's got, this is the sprout that wants to start growing. So the young ginger is going to look more like this, this node here, which is kind of light yellow in color. It doesn't have the dark brown skin. And the way that you can get the young ginger is by taking a piece of ginger that's raw and organic and hasn't been refrigerated too long and plant it into soil. And the soil and the ginger will sprout, will grow. And then this ginger root will be used to feed a new ginger root, and then that young ginger root is what you can use to make the pickled ginger. I don't particularly mind using ginger in any form for my preparations. I'm not offended by the skin. I'm not offended by the age. I've been using both of these preparations, and I don't particularly prefer one to the other. So I'm just going to demo what you would do, how you would make it using using a ginger that's a little bit older. I'm just cutting off a little bit of like the kind of like scar tissue on the sides of it. This ginger is pretty old. It's been sprouting for like 5 months or something. So this is not what store-bought ginger would look like, but if it's sprouting, then you know it's still alive and it's still good. If it's shriveled up or rotting in the inside, then you know it's not good anymore. So I'm going to use this ginger. And, you know, traditionally it's probably made by peeling the skin. I don't mind the skin, and I don't have time to do all of these like nitpicky things. Texture isn't offensive to me. Like complex flavor isn't offensive to me. So I'm just going to go for the easier way of doing it, which is just to do it with the skin on. But if you want to peel the skin, you can use a spoon to scrape the peel off and then shred it. So this is my tool of choice for slicing the ginger, my mandolin. It allows me to get very thin pieces of ginger and relatively quickly. It's a very dangerous piece of equipment. So I don't let my kids use this one at all. You can do this with a knife. Get just as thin of slices as you can. The thinner, the better. As I get closer to the bottom, I'm going to put this one down and start a new piece because I don't want to slice my finger off. Oops. So I'm getting a pile here. I don't do things by recipe. I do things by feel. So as I'm doing this, I'm going to give you kind of like the points that you're going for. Really, this recipe is about making something that's delicious and then making something that's going to preserve. And so using salt and sugar and vinegar is what we're using to preserve this ginger. And then I just put it in the refrigerator. I haven't canned this. I think it would can just fine. With those 3 preservatives, you're going to have no problem getting the acidity level high enough that it's going to be preserved just fine, either in the refrigerator or in the can. So how do I use this? I've been using this pickled ginger on salads. It's good in soups. It's thin enough that, like, you know, I don't need to cut it up anymore. But if you wanted to have, you know, very teeny tiny like slivers. You could cut it up before you put it in something. It's been really nice, sprinkled on salads in the summertime. You could use it for cooking, but it is really nice raw. I could also see adding it to like a drink, a tea blend, or a switchel, pouring off some of the brine and using that for drinking. I would definitely use the brine when I'm done with it. It's going to be so delicious, so full of ginger and shiso and vinegar and a teeny bit of salt. Okay, so I have a small pile of ginger right now. It's probably about a cup. So a cup of ginger would be a half a pint of this preparation. So I'll start with that. The next step is to put salt in it and to let it sit for a while. So, you know, I do a lot of salt fermenting, so I have a good sense of how much salt to add. So I just have like a layer of ginger on the bottom of this bowl, and I'm just going to sprinkle the top of it with salt, which is, you know, going to be between 1/4 and 1/2 tablespoon of salt. And now I'm going to just mix it up so that the salt is getting everywhere. And then let this sit for a while. I'm going to close the mandolin so nobody gets hurt. And then I'm going to talk about the next part, which is making the brine. So I like to use local ingredients, as local ingredients as possible. Traditionally, this would be made with rice wine and sugar, but because I live in a place where neither rice nor sugar grow, I'm going to use local ingredients. So the local ingredients for me are a vinegar that I've made myself, and then I'll use either maple or honey. So this is a gallon of homemade vinegar. It's bright red because I made it with berries. It's unlabeled, as many of my vinegars are, so I'm not exactly sure which berries are in it, but that's how it goes, and that's fine for me. Generally, the berries that I use are elderberry, rose hips, aronia, sumac. I have another vinegar making video, which I would encourage you to watch if you want to learn how to make your own vinegar at home. It's a very, very easy process, but it takes time. And I love the flavor of my homemade vinegars. So I'm going to, I said I have about a cup of the ginger, and in order to pack it into a liquid, I want there to be plenty of brine. So I'm going to use about 1/2 cup of vinegar. And then how much sugar you use is really up to you. You really can do it by taste. The vinegar in and of itself is going to be enough acidity to preserve the ginger, even though the ginger is releasing water into the brine, which is going to change the acidity level. It's going to bring the acidity level down. The vinegar is still pretty potent, pretty high acid. So just like when you make fire cider and you use fresh herbs, there's not enough change in the acidity level that you have mold. Sometimes if I make an herb infused vinegar with a fresh herb, it's going to lower the acidity level to too much, and then I get a surface of mold on top. This it doesn't happen with ginger or with the fire cider herbs. Again, if you want to learn more about fire cider, which is a great tonic for winter, particularly for colds, for congestion in the face and head, check out my video on making fire cider. So I have a half a cup of vinegar in here, just vinegar that I've made, herbal vinegar. It's actually vinegar made with honey. And for this one, I think I'm gonna use maple syrup, and I'm going to use maple syrup because I'm gonna heat this version. So I'm gonna put in about about a little bit less than a quarter of a cup of sugar, which is gonna be plenty sweet. And then I'm gonna heat this on the stove to get it boiling. And I'm gonna add the ginger. The ginger really wants to sit with the salt for about 10 minutes. But for the sake of making this video, I'm gonna do it quicker. So if you had the ginger and the salt, you would let that sit for 10 minutes, prep your brine, and then once the brine is boiling, I'm gonna put the ginger into the brine. So the steps for making the brine are, if I wanted to, I could just pack this ginger into the brine when it's hot. And that's the one where I said I use raw ginger. If otherwise, you can simmer the ginger in the hot brine and then pack it into a jar. Again, there's different methods for making this preparation. Some methods have you boil the ginger in water and then take it out and then put it into the brine. But for the sake of fewer steps and just absolutely wonderful, delicious condiments, I want it to be easy for me, and so this is the way that I do it. So I'm gonna take the ginger that's been sitting in salt, and I'm gonna put it into this brine solution here. And I'm gonna let it simmer for about 3 minutes. And then at that point, I'm going to take it out and I'm going to add some shiso. So you can add as much or as little shiso as you want. If you want a stronger flavored shiso, add more. If you want a stronger flavored pickled ginger, add more shiso. If you want a milder flavored pickled ginger, add less shiso. If you don't want shiso, don't add shiso. But I really love shiso, and so I'm going to add a bunch of it to this one. I'm going to put in these 4 shiso leaves that are the purple shiso. Really, having 4 shiso leaves would be enough for this preparation, but because I'm experimenting with putting in more shiso, I'm going to add a couple more leaves to it. I'm going to add some of the green shiso leaves. And I could just put them in whole and pack them whole, but I'm gonna cut them up. That way, once they're pickled, it'll be easier to use them. And again, just like the ginger, I will be using these pickled shiso leaves in salads, or in a soup. You know, and the way that I use these is definitely like, I do try, It's not that I try to, it's that I do. I tend, while I am doing fusion with these herbs and these preparations, fusing local ingredients with non-native plants and plants from other cultures and other places. When I'm using them in cooking, I tend to keep them more with the family of like meals and dishes that they're from. So the shiso ginger and salad, it'll be like in more of like an Asian style salad, whether that's a bun, a Vietnamese noodle salad, which is my favorite summer salad. I'd put that ginger in that, or whether it's like a miso soup, Japanese style soup, or like a pho soup. These ginger slices would be really good in a pho. So kind of that's how I'm using them. I don't feel like there's no reason why somebody couldn't experiment in dishes that they really like ginger in. I think that if you have dishes that you use ginger in, using this pickled ginger in that dish would be really great. Using some of the shiso in that dish would also be really great. I'm just sharing with how I do it. So I'm going to put this shiso into this jar. And I'm going to pour the, yummy. I'm going to pour the ginger and brine into this jar. So I'm using a pint jar for this, and yeah, it's a little bit less than a half a pint, but it was a good amount of liquid. There was probably less than a cup of ginger. So this was probably more like 3/4 of a cup of ginger, like, loosely sliced in that pile if I had put it into a cup. So this is the preparation, and I'm going to just cap it and put a label on it and put it in my refrigerator. And it's really ready to use anytime. I could use it today. I could let it macerate for a while and use it another time. And then, yeah, it'll be good in the refrigerator for a really long time. It's like so well preserved in this menstruum, the sugar and the maple and vinegar, that it's really not going to go bad in the refrigerator. So I could use it for years to come. And I will use it for years to come. I've used fermented foods that were in a refrigerator for 10 years and had no problem with it. If it's not moldy, it's not bad. Is some of the nutrition diminished over time? Sure, but that's fine if it still tastes great. So thank you for joining me for this Herbal Pleasure Potions adventure, all about shiso. If you appreciate my work, please subscribe to my YouTube page and follow me on Facebook, and encourage me to keep making videos and to keep sharing this wisdom. And if you feel compelled to donate to my project, which is very much about open heart economy and gift economy, please reach out with a donation for this work, as well as for the trauma recovery work that I'm doing, supporting femmes and queers and people with disabilities and BIPOC people facing oppression, who are working on trauma recovery.